Ma'am, please start.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Myself, Dr. Veena Venkatesh, working as a general manager at Ajanta Pharma Limited. On the behalf of Ajanta, I welcome everybody for this scientific session this evening. The topic would be place of statin and clopidogrel when approaching ASCVD. Today we have with us Dr. Ashwini Mehta, a renowned cardiologist from Delhi. Sir is Dr. Ashwini Mehta is currently working as a senior consultant cardiologist at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi since 1999. Primarily working as interventional cardiologist with active interest in heart failure. He has several research articles in cardiology. He has presented over 90 papers and publication in various national and international journals. He's been a part of some 25 international trials. Some of them have changed the course of cardiac treatment all over the world. The important being Paradigm HF trial. He's been the principal investigator also for some ongoing trials, ARNI, SGLT inhibitors in heart failure. He is very interested, active interest in intervention cardiology, heart failure therapies, cardiac transplant, involved in number of preventive cardiology initiatives, implementing strategy in prevention of ischemic heart disease and heart failure in the country. Sir, with this short briefing, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Ashwini Mehta. Sir, please, you can go ahead, and then at the end, we will take a question and answer session, sir. Now I'll go mute.
Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. And I'll also like to thank uh, Ajanta Pharma. Dr. Veena has given a very kind introduction of mine. And today, this talk is going to be focusing on statin and clopidogrel. And I'll like to focus mainly in light of, recently the ACC virtual session happened because of this COVID-19 infection in US. So they didn't had a live ACC, they had a virtual ACC whereby it was presented online, and there were some path-breaking trials which have come about and which have shown these two drugs in new light. So I like to focus both on statins and clopidogrel in my talk. So just to make things clear, what are we talking about is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And what is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease? It is the buildup of plaques in the arterial walls, and it refers to the following condition. When it involves the coronary artery disease, it can cause coronary heart disease, such as myocardial infarction, coronary artery stenosis of more than 50%, then it is known as a coronary artery disease. It can cause cerebrovascular disease, can lead to TIAs, strokes, and maybe or asymptomatic stenosis also of carotid arteries. And we label anything more than 50% stenosis of carotid artery as a significant disease. It can also manifest just with peripheral arterial disease. There can be blockages in the peripheral arteries leading to intermittent claudication, which is not uncommon in patients who smoke and in patients with diabetes. This disease can also manifest in the form of abdominal aortic aneurysms or thoracic aneurysms. So aneurysms can also be one of the presentation of this disease. What we know today that this is a leading cause of death all across the world, whether it is strokes or myocardial infarctions or heart failure. So they all lead to increased number of deaths all over the world, and they still continue to be the number one cause of death worldwide. So if we have to prevent this, we have something to do to take care. So we talk of prevention. So there is something known as a primary prevention. Primary prevention refers to the efforts to prevent the delay of the onset of atherosclerotic CVD. For the first onset of ASCVD is known as a primary prevention. Secondary prevention refers to efforts to treat known or clinically significant ASCVD and to prevent or delay the onset of disease manifestations. The target population for secondary prevention of ASCVD is patients who have been diagnosed with ASCVD, whether they have peripheral arterial disease or they have stroke, CVAs, or they have coronary artery disease. So any of these can be. They might sometimes even just have manifestation of aneurysms in thoracic aorta. And the goal is to prevent the recurrent cardiovascular events and decrease the coronary mortality. So, what are the major changes which can bring about this prevention? First of all, if we talk of the lifestyle modification, it is very important to have a tobacco cessation, to follow a healthy diet. And in healthy diet, there has to be Mediterranean diet or a DASH diet, but the emphasis is on basically on the plant-based foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grain breads, other forms of cereals, beans, nuts, and seeds predominantly, and to use as minimum as possible processed foods, should include fish, and also have as less possible red meat intake. The second part is limitation of alcohol consumption. Then adequate physical activity plays a big role, and moderate intensity aerobic activity, for example, 30 to 60 minutes a day for at least 5 days, and preferably 7 days a week, is an example of that. And what we talk of moderate intensity physical activity is something like walking at a pace that makes a patient feel slightly out of breath but able to maintain the conversation. So weight management is also important. Blood pressure control, diabetes control, and also there is a role of influenza vaccination. It prevents further events, and for secondary prevention, it has been shown to be of benefit. With this background, now we focus mainly on the pharmacological therapy of ASCVDs. And when we talk of pharmacological therapy of ASCVD, primarily we think of antiplatelet agents, whether it is the aspirin or P2Y12 antagonists, statins, the RAS system blockers, anti-inflammatory agents. So they all have some role to play. In my present talk, because this is a vast subject, I'll be focusing mainly on statins and on the antiplatelet agents with special focus on clopidogrel. So what about lipid management and lifestyle modification? So along with that, statin therapy has been the cornerstone of treatment. And various guidelines right from the beginning have been targeting LDL cholesterol. The targets over the last few decades have been continually going down. And today we know that we would like to achieve the LDL cholesterol of less than 70 in patients. And also, in certain group of patients who are at a higher risk, it is preferable to have LDL cholesterol levels of less than 70 in very high risk groups. And in certain patients, you can even go beyond this. There are large number of trials which have shown that if you reduce the LDL cholesterol to less than 70, the future events, they reduce. Regarding triglycerides, it's important to have them in check. Specifically, it is better to have them less than 200. And predominantly, we try and treat them with statins only. And in very high risk patients who have triglycerides of more than 200, the non-HDL cholesterol goal of less than 100 is a very reasonable goal. And once you are giving statins, you should also have a look at the non-HDL cholesterol and try to keep it in control. So if the further events can also be taken care of. Now, as far as statin treatment is concerned, it works all across the spectrum. In the secondary prevention, there is a huge evidence in patients for secondary prevention of statins, and all the statins, whether it is atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, pitavastatin, or any other statin, they've all been shown to be of great benefits. Predominantly in India, most of our patients are on atorvastatin and also on rosuvastatin. And these drugs have shown great, enormous benefit in patients who are suffering from acute coronary syndromes as well. Some of the effect of statins go much beyond the lipid lowering, and we see the effects coming even before the lipid levels are reached. So these are mainly because of the pleiotropic effects of statins. The pleiotropic effects of statins are anti-inflammatory effects. They also improve the endothelial function. They decrease the oxidative stress, and even they have some amount of inhibition of thrombogenic responses. So there is a huge evidence today of use in acute coronary syndrome, and this is now certain that the statins can be of benefit when pre-treatment was started 7 days to just before PCI. So just before PCI, if you start statin, patients of acute coronary syndrome. So now what it has led to is most of the statins are given as a bolus dose, as a big dose, just before the PCI, but it is preferable to start before the PCI. And there is a great recommendation of the use of statins. If we talk of acute coronary syndrome, definitely a large dose of statins is required before PCI, and they have a role in plaque stabilization and prevention of recurrent events. Similarly, what we know in acute coronary syndrome, thrombus formation occurs under the conditions of high shear stress, and this is principally driven by platelet aggregation. This dominance of platelet aggregation during intracoronary thrombus formation reflects the dramatic effects that antiplatelet therapies have on clinical outcomes. So that is the reason we have so many antiplatelet therapies available, and no treatment of coronary artery disease can be complete without antiplatelet therapy. So what are the antiplatelet drugs which are available? The COX-1 inhibitors, and the leading drug is aspirin, which has been there for a long time, although of late it is being questioned. It has a central role in prevention of thromboembolic complications from atherosclerotic disease. The other group being the P2Y12 antagonist, they are beneficial in treatment and prevention of ACS and prevention of thromboembolic events. The clopidogrel, prasugrel, ticlopidine, ticagrelor, and tanglor are the main drugs which are used. Then PDE inhibitors, which are also antiplatelet agents, and we use specifically in peripheral arterial disease, cilostazol, and also dipyridamole in many patients. The other antiplatelet drugs are the GP2B3A antagonists like apiximab, epifibatide, tirofiban, and they are primarily these days being used in PCI, during the PCI for whenever the thrombus burden is more. Then PAR1 antagonists like viroxapar, atoxapar are also available, and they are also being now increasingly investigated for use in acute coronary syndrome. Now, if we look at the P2Y12 antagonists, which are commonly in use, the three P2Y12 antagonists are available in India, namely clopidogrel, prasugrel, and ticagrelor. They are all oral drugs. Cangrelor is an intravenous drug. It's not available in India. They all require a loading dose other than cangrelor, which can be started as an infusion. And they do have a gradual decline of action if we stop it, and usually it takes 5 days for the effect of these antiplatelet agents to go away. The frequency is daily other than ticagrelor, which is twice a day. And they are now recommended as one of the cornerstones in treatment, and specifically during the PCIs. If you're doing PCI of stable coronary artery disease, we have to keep in mind the bleeding risk of the patient and also the other risk of the patient. And I'll be talking about this in subsequent slides. The post-procedural antiplatelet therapy, the recommendations are that if the patient is receiving a stent, BMS or DES during the PCI, for the ACS, the P2Y12 inhibitor therapy should be given at least for 12 months. And clopidogrel 75 milligrams daily is used, or prasugrel or ticagrelor can also be used. In patients receiving DES for non-ACS indication, the clopidogrel 75 milligram daily should be given at least for 12 months if the patient is not at a high risk of bleeding. And similarly, there is an indication only for ticagrelor and without PCI in patients also. In patients receiving BMS for non-ACS medication, clopidogrel should be given for a minimum of 1 month, ideally up to 12 months. So, but these days, very few patients receive bare metal stents. Most of the patients are implanted the drug-eluting stents. The post-procedural antiplatelet therapy recommendations are in risk of morbidity from bleeding if it is more than the anticipated benefit afforded by the recommended duration of P2Y12 inhibitor after stent therapy. Earlier discontinuation is possible. And these days, specifically with the newer generation stent, the second and the third generation stent, we can consider discontinuing the P2Y12 inhibitor therapy even much earlier, maybe just as early as 3 months or 6 months in certain group of patients. The continuation of clopidogrel, prasugrel, or ticagrelor is ideally up to 12 months, but beyond 12 months may be considered in certain group of patients, specifically those who have undergone the acute coronary syndrome and who are at a high risk, like patients with diabetes and other comorbid conditions, should also be considered. In last approximately 1 decade, one molecule which has stood the test of time and has been used all across this spectrum has been clopidogrel, and it is one of the most widely prescribed drugs for treatment of symptomatic coronary artery disease. There have been so many trials, there have been so many articles regarding its use. One of the landmark trial I like to discuss here is the Capri trial, which compared clopidogrel with aspirin. It was a multi-center, double-blind, parallel randomized trial in about 19,000 patients. Clopidogrel was given 75 milligrams once daily in about 9,599 patients and aspirin 325 milligrams. They were followed up for approximately 2 years, and the cardiac event you see were less in clopidogrel compared to the aspirin. So this trial established firmly the role of clopidogrel in management of coronary artery disease, and this led to further use of clopidogrel. So we know for sure that clopidogrel reduces CV outcomes more than aspirin when used in secondary prevention among patients with prior stroke or myocardial infarction, because that was the subset in which it was studied in the Capri trial. And also we know that a large majority of patients, even in our country, are having aspirin resistance. So there are various laboratory parameters which are available for assessing the efficacy of aspirin, like bleeding time, platelet reactivity, the thromboxane A2 production, or measurement of platelet aggregation. So we know from various parameters or various ways that the aspirin resistance is there in our country, and a large number of such patients can be taken care by clopidogrel and the other drugs. And mind you, there is also a risk of clopidogrel resistance in certain group of patients, although which is low, but it is also there. Of late, there have been use of ticagrelor and prasugrel, specifically in the PCI subsets, and there have been trials which have shown superiority of ticagrelor and prasugrel over clopidogrel in subset of acute coronary syndrome, specifically treated with PCI also. So a large number of patients in India today are also being given prasugrel and ticagrelor. Ticagrelor subsequently can be switched over to clopidogrel. And there was one study, and this is from South Korea, which was published. And they looked at investigate the switching from ticagrelor to clopidogrel in Asian population after accounting from various switch points in the real world scenario. It was a single center study in about 349 STEMI patients who were started on DAPT with ticagrelor and aspirin and maintained on ticagrelor 90 milligram twice a day and aspirin 100 once a day following the PCI for 12 months, and about 219 patients were switched to clopidogrel therapy, 75 milligrams once a day, at their physician discretion, and they were classified as a switched group. About 130 patients who remained on ticagrelor were classified as ticagrelor only group. So there were two groups of patients, 219 who were switched to clopidogrel, and about 130 who remained on ticagrelor and were classified as ticagrelor only group. So these patients were studied in this trial, and the results were that the 41st, they looked at the first 40 events which happened, the MACE and the other bleeds. And if we look at the table here, in the group of patients from switched from clopidogrel, the MACE events, and in the ticagrelor group, you see the MACE events of about 2.3% in those who were switched over to the clopidogrel group, and 6.9 in the ticagrelor group, and also the significant clinical bleed, 7.8 in the clopidogrel group and 6.9 in the ticagrelor group. So many of these patients can be easily switched over from ticagrelor to clopidogrel subsequently, and it does not affect their long-term outcomes. Now, if we look at the primary composite, which is bleeding plus MACE, so compared to ticagrelor group only, the switched group was not significantly associated with both MACE or CSV event, which is clinically significant bleeding. The secondary outcomes also, there was no significant difference in both the groups which were analyzed, and these clinically significant bleeds were also not much different. So to conclude, as a part of this study, the concerns over increased bleeding risk with more potent ticagrelor remain. The most common reasons for switching to clopidogrel in our day-to-day practice also, we do see this very frequently, that patients are started on ticagrelor and then are subsequently switched over to clopidogrel. No significant difference between staying on ticagrelor and switching to clopidogrel was reported. Switching might decrease the incidence of clinically significant bleeds. De-escalation from ticagrelor to clopidogrel could translate to cost savings for Asian patients without compromising their safety and efficacy. And this is what we see in many centers all across India, that we do switch over between these drugs. The simultaneous administration of high dose atorvastatin and clopidogrel during PCI has also been studied, and there was one study which was published in Clinical Pharmacology. About 60 subjects undergoing PCI were randomized in two groups. The first group was atorvastatin 80 milligrams plus clopidogrel, and group 2 clopidogrel 600 milligram alone at the time of PCI. And they looked at the event, the platelet aggregation at baseline at 4 hours, between 16 to 24 hours, and there was no significant difference in platelet aggregation in both the groups. Now, why this study was done? Because initially it was thought that if you co-administer atorvastatin along with clopidogrel, the effect of clopidogrel can be inhibited in between. So starting reloading with high dosages of atorvastatin at the time of PCI appears to be safe without any adverse effects on platelet inhibition by the clopidogrel. The concomitant use of clopidogrel and statin and a risk of major adverse clinical events following coronary stent implant have also been studied. This was a population-based cohort study, identified all 13,001 patients who underwent coronary stent implant, and during 12 months of follow-up, tracked use of clopidogrel and CYP3A4 metabolizing statin and the rate of MACE were analyzed, and it was certain that statins significantly reduce mortality in patients receiving clopidogrel. The combination of statin, specifically atorvastatin with clopidogrel, is safe. It is frequently administered in patients with coronary artery disease. The PubMed, Embase, Cochrane Library, Web Science and Clinical Trials, all data was searched in this. The RCTs and cohort studies were taken into quality evaluation. The data was pooled. In total, there were 28 studies and about 25,000 patients. The statin reduced the mortality of patients administered clopidogrel. There were no difference found in platelet aggregation. And this makes sure that this combination is scientific, rational, and is effective. And it brings about no difference in platelet aggregability. It is not affected at all. So in India, there is a great need of improving the compliance, and the combinations of high dose statin and clopidogrel are available. The combination of statin with clopidogrel, both 10, 20, and 40 milligrams are available. And this is the scientific basis of use of this combination. This meta-analysis confirmed that the statins reduce mortality in patients undergoing clopidogrel treatment without affecting the platelet aggregation or any other effects. So of late this year, the ACC 2020, which was the virtual ACC because of the infection, the pandemic of Corona. It was a 3-day experience, and most of this was on the virtual platform. Certain interesting trials which have a relook at clopidogrel and atorvastatin, they were presented, and I like to pick on few trials results and discuss with you here their outcomes. So one of the studies by the name Sparkle study, which is stroke prevention by aggressive reduction in cholesterol levels trial, this was done. In this, atorvastatin was compared with placebo in about 4,731 patients with history of recent stroke or transient ischemic attack, but they had no coronary artery disease. So atorvastatin reduced the occurrence of stroke and the first occurrence of composite of vascular events. That was the premise on which this study was done. The aim of this post hoc analysis was to assess the occurrence of all vascular events, whichever vessel bed they involve, and the effect of atorvastatin to reduce these events by vascular territory, whether it is cerebrovascular, coronary, or peripherally in this Sparkle study. The treatment effects on total adjudicated vascular events overall by vascular territory were summarized. And what you can see here is that atorvastatin reduces the total events overall and across vascular beds in Sparkle registry. And what this found out, that in patients receiving atorvastatin, there were 828 events compared to 1,218 in the placebo group. So this had a hazard ratio of 0.68, which is quite significant. And if we look at cerebrovascular events, again you see there was a reduction from 37.1 to 28.1 per 100 patients, and the hazard ratio of 0.76. In coronary events, which is quite significant, 20.1 per 100 patients in placebo to 10.8 per 100 in atorvastatin group with the hazard ratio of 0.54. And in the peripheral group, from 4.8 to 2.8 is the reduction, and the hazard ratio of 0.56 was seen. So to conclude, as we can see here in this graph, in participants with recent stroke or TIAs, the total number of vascular events prevented with atorvastatin was more than twice the number of first events, as you can see here. The total event reduction provides a comprehensive metric to capture the totality of atorvastatin clinical efficacy in reducing this disease. Not only the burden of stroke and ischemic attacks, but also in the various other vascular beds, whether it's the peripheral vascular disease or the coronary artery disease. Then there was another very interesting paper which was on effects of DAPT in patients with acute coronary syndrome, the stable ischemic heart disease versus CABG. The optimal antiplatelet therapy following revascularization with CABG has always been unclear. We've never been sure at what we need to do. The current study sought to evaluate whether the long-term clinical outcomes according to use of DAPT or a single antiplatelet therapy differed between ACS and stable ischemic heart disease patients who underwent CABG. So total number of patients who underwent CABG was 3,260, with about 55% being those with background of ACS and about 44% being those with background of stable ischemic heart disease. They were enrolled in this study. The study population was stratified by use of single or dual antiplatelet agents in this group of patients, and the primary outcome was cardiac death at 5 years. The conclusion was that among ACS patients who underwent CABG, the use of DAPT was associated with lower cardiac mortality than use of single antiplatelet agent. But in patients of stable ischemic heart disease, there was no such difference. Something which we also see in patients undergoing PCI with ACS. In patients undergoing PCI with ACS, we know that we might require DAPT for a longer time. And these results almost mirror the results of PCI. Another very interesting trial was discussed here, which was Taylor PCI study. This is a very interesting trial, and it was on the use of clopidogrel versus ticagrelor and prasugrel in primary PCI with normal functions, which was the basis of a genetic study. The efficacy of clopidogrel compared to more potent drugs such as prasugrel and ticagrelor, it remains a subject of debate. The popular genetics included patients undergoing PCI. In the phenotype guided group, they were tested for CYP2C19-2 and STA3 loss of function alleles. The non-carriers of this particular genes, they were treated with clopidogrel. And the carriers and patients in standard treatment arm were treated either with ticagrelor or with prasugrel. The CYP2C19 status for patients in standard treatment arm was determined after the trial. The primary outcomes were occurrence of net clinical benefit, which is all-cause death, myocardial infarction, definite stent thrombosis, stroke or platelet inhibition, and platelet outcomes, major bleeding and minor bleeding at 1 year, they were all studied. Secondary outcomes were combined ischemic outcome of cardiovascular death, MI, definite ST and stroke, and the individual outcome of these were also studied. In patients undergoing primary PCI with normal function of CYP2C19 gene, clopidogrel resulted in less bleedings and there was no difference in net clinical benefit compared to ticagrelor, although it missed the statistical significance just very narrowly. So this means that most of our patients can do very well with clopidogrel. Then we are also sure that weight affects the efficacy and safety of antiplatelet agents. This has been the basis of thinking of many interventionists. And the impact of overweight on safety and efficacy of platelet-based test-based de-escalation strategy of prasugrel versus clopidogrel among ACS patients after ACI was studied. The BMI may influence active metabolite generation from thienopyridines and impact the platelet outcomes. This pre-specified sub-study of randomized tropical ACS trials sought to evaluate the impact of BMI and overweight on platelet reactivity and clinical outcomes for a platelet functioning testing guided de-escalation strategy versus prasugrel treatment in patients of ACS after PCI. So in this study, the patients were randomly assigned to treatment with prasugrel, which was the control group, or a step-down regimen with prasugrel was done, which is applying 1 week of prasugrel followed by 1 week of clopidogrel and PFT guided maintenance therapy with clopidogrel or prasugrel in the guided group. The primary endpoint was net clinical benefit including cardiovascular death, myocardial infarction, stroke, or BARC bleeding at 12 months. The platelet reactivity and the rate of HPR increase in both plasogrel and clopidogrel treated patients with BMI. The strategy of guided de-escalation was associated with significant net clinical benefit in non-overweight patients, which was mainly driven by reduction of bleeding. And the two strategies showed similar clinical outcomes in overweight patients. So in patients who are not obese, so there can be a significant role of just continuing with clopidogrel. Now, based on this recent evidence and various evidences which I have discussed today regarding the use of clopidogrel and also of atorvastatin in my talk today, we are certain that statins and clopidogrel are here to stay. Statins are used primarily for secondary prevention of ASCVD in all patients and for primary prevention in those patients who are at a high risk. Clopidogrel is used to prevent heart attack or stroke in patients with acute coronary syndrome, with established peripheral vascular disease or stroke. And there is a good evidence, we can safely say, of high dose atorvastatin and clopidogrel, when used in combination, can have a very beneficial effect in our patients. Thank you so much for your kind attention. This session is open for further discussions.
Sir, I should compliment you for the excellent talk.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of questions and some I also would like to ask you. First question is from Dr. Nirdosh. Are statins really effective? Something it's like in acute respiratory condition.
Okay. I think he's asking in context of this present pandemic of
COVID, yeah.
COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is something very interesting. And, in the present pandemic of COVID, there have been some studies which have come about and they talked about the outcomes based on patients who are on statins. So number one thing is certain that if a patient who is already on statin gets an infection of corona virus, the present pandemic, he should continue on statins because they have shown that patients who continued to be on statins, they had definitely better outcomes. And there have been few studies which do support, and one of the paper came about and it did talk about the rationale of use of statins, which is widely being used as an add-on treatment in COVID-19 patients. Why? Because of their immunomodulatory properties. Nothing to do with their lipid lowering, but because of their immunomodulatory properties, there have been papers which do suggest a role, but a big role needs to be investigated based on further clinical study.
Is that which dose, sir? Like if at all, if it's atorvastatin or rosuvastatin?
Well, they didn't talk in this paper about any high dose statins or something, but
Okay.
definitely they did talk of the effect on the cytokine storm and all that. And what we know that for good immunomodulation, you need to give little higher dosages only. So probably that could be basically looking into the pleiotropic effects such as effects on inflammation, oxidative stress, which could have beneficial effect in preventing the cytokine storms and damage to the lungs and heart.
Okay, sir. So, question from Dr. Anil Agarwal. If statin prescribed, should it be continued throughout the life of the patient? If suppose stopped, is there any rebound increase in LDL? Is it true in the practice? Is asking.
Yes, so there are two parts to this question. It's a very practical question which he has asked. So the first part of question is that whether the statins should be continued lifelong. And this is one question which is asked to us by our patients also. Following any particular event or when they undergo revascularization and patients are started on statins, then after a few years, they start questioning that whether the statin has to be continued. And what about the risk? The evidence as of now is overwhelmingly in favor of continuing statins lifelong. Although there has been a debate that in patients who are able to achieve their targets without statins, whether we should continue statins in them or not, the evidence is yes, we should continue statins in all group of patients for secondary prevention, even if they have achieved their targets. So we have to continue. The second part of question regarding the rebound.
Yes.
This is a very well-known phenomena, and we are certain that when statins are stopped, initially the LDL and cholesterol levels they rise because of the use because of statins. There is a upregulation of the enzyme, and once you stop statins, so initially there is a significant rebound in increase in LDL cholesterol, which continues to remain elevated for a few weeks, and then it reaches its original level. So you need to continue that, and rebound is a known phenomena. And in fact, there have been studies which have shown that after withdrawal of statins, the event rates have increased.
Okay. And the other question is like, what is the incidence of statin-induced diabetes, new onset diabetes? There was a paper like, is it
Yeah.
seen new onset diabetes in statin?
Yes, this is also a very important question, which is asked very frequently. And the first signals for this came about and it was established after the Jupiter trial for primary prevention. And what it showed was that there were a small group of patients who had increase in their HbA1c levels. And it was thought that many patients would become diabetic with that. But then what we know that definitely this is there. We do see as little increase in the HbA1c levels. But what we know that it can worsen diabetes. But at the same time, we also know that this is a reversible phenomena.
Mhm.
If these statins are stopped, so it can be reversed. But the benefit of these patients by way of reduction in dyslipidemia and because of the pleiotropic benefits
Mhm.
far outweighs the risk of diabetes, which is quite less compared to the benefits.
Sorry, is this like applicable to even pre-diabetic condition also?
Yes, there have been studies which have shown that even in the pre-diabetic conditions also, this is possible. It is possible to have that.
Sir, very like important question and often asked. Role of aspirin for primary prevention of ACS,
Yeah.
and whether ACS patients as well as subcategory like in diabetic patients.
Now, this is, of last year, there were three major trials which happened. And they all looked at different populations. They looked at the primary prevention part with the aspirin. And we have evidence now coming very clearly that as far as primary prevention is concerned, aspirin probably has no role. The risk of bleeding
Hmm.
is much more than the risk of benefit. So, and also in diabetes, more large majority of our physicians are still writing aspirin for primary prevention in diabetic patients. But even in diabetes patients, there is a clear-cut evidence that aspirin has no role for primary prevention, whereas statins definitely have a role for primary prevention because the risk of bleeding far outweighs the risk of coronary events.
But this is true for secondary prevention, right, sir? Aspirin
Yeah.
have to be given for secondary prevention.
Absolutely. There is no doubt about secondary prevention. All patients who have any sort of atherosclerotic disease, whether it is cerebrovascular disease, coronary artery disease, peripheral vascular disease, or uh, any aneurysms in the abdominal or thoracic aorta, they all have to be on aspirin. But as far as primary prevention is concerned, there is no role. Secondary, it is the drug, you just can't do away with it.
So this is a direct question from Dr. Arora. Can we use Atofit CV in COPD patients?
Yes, why not? Atorfit in patients who have any sort of indication for the use of combination of statin with antiplatelet agents, whether the patient has other comorbid conditions, COPD or any other disease, they can be easily used. There is no problem in use in COPD patients.
Okay, sir. Sir, you mentioned in your talk about the aspirin resistance,
Yeah.
but do you also see the clopidogrel resistance, which you mentioned? Yes. How often do you see, sir? Like,
In fact, clopidogrel resistance is also seen, and it is not uncommon, clopidogrel resistance in India.
mhm.
And as far as this resistance is concerned, there have been various studies. But when we talk of resistance, it can be a partial resistance and a resistance to a very high extent. And it is classically defined as less than 10% decrease from the baseline aggregation response to the ADP. And what is found is that in India also, about 30 to 40% population have some amount of uh, clopidogrel resistance, and the non-responsiveness with clopidogrel, which can be because of resistance, is much higher in specifically in those patients who have small vessel stroke. And unlike the aspirin, a high proportion of non-responders to clopidogrel, they have been identified in Indian population. And there have been some studies from India which do show there is clopidogrel resistance, but this resistance is quite variable. It doesn't mean that the patient will have no effect at all. They might have some effect to prevent also, but they all also classify in the clopidogrel resistance. And it is mainly because of gene polymorphisms.
Okay. Sir, in your practice, what's the door? Okay. Up to what duration the high dosage of statin require in ACS patients? What should be
Yeah,
the duration for high dose statins?
yeah, this is a very good question and very commonly asked question. So, in fact, when the high dose statins were used, so lots and lots of speculations were there that we should use it for 6 weeks at least, and then it increased to a much longer period and up to 1 year, and then some people were even talking to be used indefinitely. So there is one paper from Italy, from Naples, and what it talks about is that after 1 month of high dose statins and up to 1 year, they reduced the high dose statin to low dose statin. And subsequently, what they found was that the events rates increased after 1 month, up to 1 year. So we are definitely certain that we must continue high dose statin at least for a year, and preferably if the patient is tolerating, lifelong.
Is this post intervention also or
Yeah, exactly. This is post ACS post intervention also.
okay? Sir, I just want to ask. You mentioned about the dual antiplatelet therapy
Yeah.
post PPI and all.
Mhm.
What is your choice of two antiplatelet drugs post PCI?
Yeah. So if the patient is not having atrial fibrillation, because then you also have to use anticoagulation. So in patients who have atrial fibrillation, then clopidogrel is my only choice.
Okay.
Then in the first intensive part, for a month we use aspirin, clopidogrel, and the NOAC agent, and then subsequently continue with NOAC plus clopidogrel later on, and drop the aspirin. Whereas in patients who don't have atrial fibrillation and undergoing PCI, we have all the three drugs available: clopidogrel, prasugrel, and ticagrelor. We have been very comfortable in using clopidogrel over last so many years, I think more than a decade or so, and we've been loading it. Of late, large number of patients are also being given ticagrelor because of its rapid onset of action, and the advantage being that with the rapid onset of action, you feel at ease that the peri-procedural complications are going to be less, and being a more potent drug. On the downside, you see much more, few more incidents of bleeding also. But in one of the studies which I had shown, I had also shown that there's switching from ticagrelor to clopidogrel, which was a study from Singapore, and they did talk about that you can switch it easily after 1 month of ticagrelor. So in our predominant use is of clopidogrel followed by ticagrelor, and very few patients on prasugrel.
So is this prasugrel has a higher incidence of bleeding, even though
This
it's a potent?
prasugrel has great disadvantages, specifically in women, patients who have body mass index low, weight less than 65 kgs. So these are the patients who have a much higher incidence of bleeding. So it should be used with caution in this group of patients.
Okay. Mm,
The another problem with ticagrelor is a very high incidence of the breathing problem which the patients experience, which is because of generation of the ADP. There's a sense of breathing breathlessness which is there in patients. So many times patients who are on ticagrelor, we have to switch them over to clopidogrel because of that. It's
okay.
not uncommon.
But aspirin is continued.
Aspirin is continued, definitely.
Okay. With whatever may be the drugs, aspirin.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, sir. I think no more questions from our audience. Sir, it was really an excellent talk and good learning, especially the question answer session. It was very much interactive, so that all common questions and in the practice were asked, and then all our audiences, I think probably they are very clear about the practice. Pankaj, you can now speak over.
Thank you, madam, for giving this opportunity for vote of thanks. Myself, Pankaj Kumar Patel from Ajanta Pharma. And Ajanta Pharma is amongst the top companies in cardiology in India, which focus more on bringing the new innovative product as well as the combinations first time in India. Adorfit CV is such one product. We are also very much committed towards our scientific deliberations to the doctors. And today we are very much thankful to Dr. Aswini Mehta for his excellent talk and scientific deliberations, for all the supports. We are also very much thankful to all delegates who have joined in spite of their tough time and tight schedule. I am also would like to thank my field team, head office team, and Dr. Veena Venkatesh and his team for making this program successful. Sir, have a great time, sir, and good day. Thanks to all once again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Ajanta Pharma and Dr. Veena Venkatesh for putting together this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Good
Thank
evening.
you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.